Germany, the country that rebuilt itself from literal rubble to become the economic engine of an entire continent. 80 years of industrial dominance. The country whose engineers invented the automobile, whose chemists created modern pharmaceuticals, whose factories once made the phrase "made in Germany" synonymous with the highest standard on earth. It's dying, not because of bad luck, not because of Putin, not because of COVID. Those are the explanations politicians reach for when they don't want you to notice who actually lit the fire. Germany's collapse is self-inflicted. 3 decisions, made across 3 decades, built a trap so precisely engineered that escaping it would now require a level of political courage this country simply hasn't shown. And one of those 3 mistakes is being actively copied right now by governments that believe they are being visionary. That's the part worth paying attention to. Fatal mistake. 1. The China addiction. How Germany sold its future for a decade of profits. Here's a number. In 2021, Volkswagen sold more cars in China than in Europe and North America combined. Not more than one of those markets, more than both of them put together. Let that breathe for a second. The same was true for BMW, for Mercedes-Benz. By 2022, Germany's entire automotive industrial complex had restructured itself around a single assumption. The Chinese consumers would keep buying German premium vehicles indefinitely, at premium prices and premium volumes. It wasn't a side bet. It was the entire architecture of the business. This didn't happen by accident. It was a deliberate, board-level decision made across 2 decades. Germany had the engineering precision. China had the customers and the scale. Germany had its legendary middle stand, the dense network of mid-sized precision manufacturers that forms the backbone of the German economy, the companies that make the specialist components nobody else can make. And China needed that expertise to modernize. It looked from every angle like a relationship that served both parties. But there is an old principle in geopolitics that Germany's most expensive consulting firms somehow forgot to include in their strategy decks. When a single customer accounts for more than 1/3 of your profits, you don't have a customer. You have a landlord. By 2023, China accounted for between 35 and 40% of the combined profits of Germany's 3 largest automakers. Strip out the China business, and Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz would have reported results that looked profoundly unremarkable. The Chinese market wasn't supplementing German industrial success. It was the main event. Everything else was the support act. Then China built its own car industry. Not just assembled one from imported parts. It engineered one, and it perfected it in the one category that was supposed to be Germany's future for the next 50 years. Electric vehicles. BYD, a company that most European executives treated as a joke as recently as 2019, became the world's largest EV manufacturer by unit volume in 2023. Its Seal sedan, a direct competitor to the BMW 3 Series and the Tesla Model 3, came to market at roughly 30% lower cost and packed with technology that German engineers took over a year to reverse engineer and understand fully. By 2024, Chinese branded vehicles held nearly 35% of their own domestic EV market. German market share in China fell for the 3rd year running, and the tide wasn't turning, it was accelerating. The trap had closed. VW faced a choice that had no good answer. Compete on price in China and destroy the premium positioning that justifies charging 60,000 euros for a car in Frankfurt. Or retreat from China and lose the profit engine, subsidizing everything else. In late 2024, the company announced potential factory closures in Germany. The first in its 87-year history. 3 plants, tens of thousands of jobs. On German soil, at the company that is in many ways Germany's industrial identity. The union response was strikes and negotiations. The political response was emergency summits. But what both responses missed entirely was the structural reality underneath the headlines. Those factories weren't closing because of bad management or lazy workers. They were closing because the strategic architecture of the entire company had been built on an assumption that turned out to be wrong. The customer had become the competitor. The market had become the trap. There is a historical parallel that Germany's business press is not making. In the 1970s and 1980s, British manufacturing faced an almost identical situation. British companies had come to dominate certain export sectors, textiles, shipbuilding, steel, heavy engineering, and had allowed those markets to become the entire premise of their existence rather than one pillar of a diversified strategy. When cheaper competition emerged and global demand shifted, there was no plan B. There had never been a plan B. The adjustment that followed was brutal and prolonged, and it permanently hollowed out entire regions of the country. The economic and social scars from that decade still shape British politics today. Germany is now standing at that junction, not approaching it, standing at it. And here's the part that connects directly to the next mistake. BASF, the world's largest chemical company and a symbol of German industrial permanence, announced in 2023 that it was permanently reducing its German footprint and shifting significant production capacity to China. not as a hedge against uncertainty, as a considered strategic reorientation. The company cited one thing above everything else: energy costs. Which brings us to how Germany got there. Fatal mistake 2, the energy suicide, the most expensive ideology in modern economic history. In March 2011, a tsunami of extraordinary force struck the Fukushima nuclear facility on Japan's Pacific coast. 3 reactors suffered meltdown. It was a catastrophe by any measure, triggered by a once-in-a-millennium seismic event on one of the most geologically volatile coastlines on Earth. 3 weeks later, Angela Merkel, a trained physicist, a woman who had reversed her own position on nuclear energy just 2 years earlier and called it a bridge technology that Germany needed, announced that every one of Germany's nuclear power plants would be shut down. By 2022, Germany is not Japan. There are no Pacific fault lines running beneath its landscape. The Rhine does not sit on a tectonic plate boundary. Germany's nuclear infrastructure was among the most modern and rigorously maintained in the world. None of that entered the calculation. Fukushima had happened. German public opinion shifted in a matter of days, and Merkel, one of the shrewdest political operators in post-war European history, made a decision she knew was politically necessary and dressed it in the language of safety. The policy was called Energiewende, the energy transition, and on paper it was breathtaking in its ambition. Germany would exit nuclear power, phase out coal, and replace both with wind and solar at a speed and scale never attempted by an advanced industrial economy. Germany would demonstrate to the world that a major manufacturing nation could power itself on clean energy. It would be the model, the proof of concept. What actually happened was the most expensive industrial policy miscalculation in post-war European history. Germany spent, by 2023, over €500 billion on the Energiewende. German households were paying electricity prices that were among the highest on Earth, roughly 3 times the American residential rate. But household prices were almost a secondary concern. Industrial electricity prices, the number that determines whether a factory stays in Germany or moves somewhere cheaper, reached levels that made German manufacturing structurally uncompetitive in global markets. Not temporarily uncompetitive, structurally, in ways that don't resolve when energy prices eventually settle back down, because companies make investment decisions over 10 and 20-year horizons. Once a board decides to stop building capacity in Germany, that decision is rarely reversed. Here is the part of the Energiewende story that receives almost no attention. When Germany closed its nuclear plants, which produced zero-carbon electricity cheaply and reliably, it did not replace them quickly enough with wind and solar, so it filled the gap with coal. Germany, the country that presented itself to the world as the global conscience on climate action, became the largest consumer of lignite coal in Europe. Lignite, the lowest grade, highest emission, most environmentally destructive form of coal available, burned in plants built during the 1970s. The carbon arithmetic was a disaster. In the years immediately following the nuclear closures, Germany's CO2 emissions per unit of electricity generated rose, not fell. The policy designed explicitly to reduce carbon emissions was empirically and measurably increasing them. The ideology had eaten the outcome. But the deeper strategic catastrophe was what the energy policy did to Germany's geopolitical position. Without nuclear baseload and with renewables not yet capable of filling the gap, Germany needed a reliable, affordable backup. And right across the eastern border, Russia was offering natural gas at prices that seemed almost designed to be irresistible. The relationship with Gazprom deepened steadily across 2 decades. Nord Stream 1 was already running. Nord Stream 2 was built over the sustained and explicit objections of Poland, Ukraine, the Baltic states, every neighboring country with direct historical experience of what Russian energy dependency actually meant in practice. Germany's political establishment dismissed those objections as parochialism or Cold War nostalgia. By 2021, more than half of Germany's natural gas imports came from Russia. Germany had converted the most geopolitically aggressive country in Europe into its utility provider. When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, and Germany was forced to sever that dependency in a matter of months rather than years, the industrial consequences arrived immediately. Energy-intensive industries, chemicals, steel, glass, ceramics, paper, faced input cost increases that could not be absorbed and could not be passed to customers operating in global markets. Plants reduced output, some idled entirely. Executives who had been quietly running the numbers for years finally stopped hesitating and began moving production to the United States, where the Inflation Reduction Act was offering generous subsidies, and to Asia, where energy was simply cheap. There's a phrase from military history that applies precisely here, the Maginot Line. France spent an extraordinary sum after World War I constructing impenetrable fortifications along its border with Germany. The engineering was superb. The strategic logic seemed airtight. France was entirely confident it had solved the problem of German military aggression. In 1940, Germany walked around it through Belgium, and the Maginot Line became a monument to the danger of solving perfectly for the wrong problem. Germany's Energiewende is the economic Maginot Line, engineered with precision, funded at extraordinary scale, designed with absolute conviction, and it solved for the wrong problem entirely. Germany built an energy policy that prioritized ideological consistency over industrial reality. The result was a manufacturing nation left exposed exactly where it believed it was protected. And the final act of this particular tragedy, in April of 2023, after the Russian gas crisis had fully materialized, after industrial electricity prices had already crushed competitiveness across entire sectors, after the evidence was no longer theoretical but operational, Germany switched off its last 3 nuclear power plants as scheduled. The decision was not revisited. The ideology held. The IFO Institute measured what followed in real time. By 2024, Germany had contracted for 2 consecutive years. The economy that had been the envy of the G7 was its worst performer. Not the second worst, the worst. Fatal mistake 3. The demographic death spiral. The debt Bismarck left behind. Here's a sentence that requires a moment to parse. Germany has one of the most skilled, productive, and educated workforces in the industrialized world. Germany also had approximately 1.7 million unfilled job vacancies in 2023. And Germany simultaneously has an unemployment rate, billions of euros in pension obligations growing every year, and healthcare costs projected to consume an increasing share of GDP for the next 2 decades. How is it possible to have a labor shortage and unfilled vacancies and unemployment and a pension crisis simultaneously? The answer runs back 136 years to a decision made by one of the most capable, and in this context, most consequential, politicians in European history. Otto von Bismarck invented the welfare state. In 1889, the Iron Chancellor introduced old age insurance for German workers. It was, from a political strategy perspective, a work of genius. It gave working people a material stake in the survival of the state. It neutralized socialist movements by demonstrating that the government was capable of acting in ordinary citizens' interests. The model spread across Europe and eventually the world. But here is what Bismarck built into the architecture of that system, and what nobody discusses openly. The original German pension eligibility age was 70. In 1889, average life expectancy in Germany was approximately 40 years. Bismarck created a pension that the majority of workers would pay into their entire working lives and almost never collect. The system was funded by contributions that permanently exceeded payouts. The math was comfortable. By design. Now run that same system forward to 2025. German life expectancy is 82 years. Pension eligibility begins at 67. Germans are collecting pensions for an average of 15 years, and rising. The baby boomer cohort, those born between roughly 1955 and 1969, is retiring in successive waves. Approximately 7 million workers will have left the German labor force by 2030. 7 million contributors converted into 7 million recipients. And the generation replacing them? Germany's fertility rate sits at approximately 1.4 children per woman. The replacement rate is 2.1. Germany has been below replacement for so long that its population pyramid has structurally inverted. There are now more Germans above 60 than below 30. The OECD projects that without significant structural intervention or sustained immigration, Germany's working-age population will shrink by approximately 5 million people by 2035. 5 million fewer contributors to a system that needs more revenue every year to sustain an expanding retiree population. The physics of this are not complicated. They are simply ignored. Germany did attempt to address part of this through immigration. The 2015 refugee crisis brought over 1 million people into the country, and Merkel's decision to keep the border open was either an act of moral leadership or a catastrophic miscalculation, depending entirely on what outcome you're measuring. Integration into the labor market was slow and uneven. By 2024, anti-immigration parties were polling at levels unthinkable a decade earlier. The political space for the open labor market policies Germany desperately needed was collapsing, and the immigration Germany most needed, software engineers, nurses, specialist tradespeople, mathematicians, wasn't arriving. Germany's residency and recognition processes were among the most complex in the developed world. A qualified engineer from outside the EU could expect years of credential recognition bureaucracy before being allowed to practice their profession in Germany. Canada, Australia, and the Netherlands had streamlined these processes specifically to compete for global talent. Germany had not. Japan offers the cautionary tale Germany appears not to have learned from. Japan's demographic crisis predates Germany's by about 15 years. Same structure, same inversion of the population pyramid, same cultural hesitancy around immigration, same industrial model built on specific export sectors. The result was what economists now simply call Japan's lost decades. A nation of extraordinary discipline and capability, trapped in a structural vice for 3 decades, experiencing stagnation so prolonged that entire generations of Japanese workers had never known economic growth. The Bertelsmann Foundation, one of Germany's most credible policy research institutions, projected in 2023 that pension and healthcare obligations alone would consume an additional 5 percentage points of German GDP by 2035 under current trajectories. That is 5 percentage points that won't be invested in digital infrastructure. And the research that might produce competitive responses to Chinese EVs in the energy grid that the Energiewende actually requires to function. The aging society is consuming the resources that might otherwise have funded its own escape. The convergence. Why this is not a recession. Most economic crises are single variable problems: a financial crash, a commodity shock, a pandemic disruption. Fix the variable, the system recovers. Economic history is full of countries that absorbed single shocks and came back stronger. Germany's situation is 3 variables operating simultaneously, each amplifying the others in ways that make the compound effect qualitatively different from any one of the 3 alone. The China addiction starved German automakers of the profits they needed to fund the electric vehicle transition that might have preserved their global position. The energy crisis made the manufacturing base structurally uncompetitive at precisely the moment Chinese manufacturers were achieving cost parity on the very products Germany most needed to sell. The demographic collapse is draining the experienced workforce at precisely the moment Germany requires its most capable engineers and industrial problem solvers to navigate both of the other crises simultaneously. Remove any one leg, and the structure might hold. With all 3 under pressure together, Germany is looking at something that economists are starting to describe with words they apply rarely: structural decline. The Bundesbank, an institution not associated with dramatic language, a central bank that once described a financial crisis as a period of elevated uncertainty, warned in its 2024 annual report that Germany faced structural challenges of unusual breadth and depth. For this institution, that is the equivalent of standing up and shouting. The IMF's 2024 Article 4 consultation on Germany was unusually direct. Structural reform was urgent. The Schuldenbremse, Germany's constitutional debt brake, the balanced budget rule that had once been celebrated across Europe as a model of fiscal discipline, was now actively preventing the public investments that could interrupt the decline. Germany had written fiscal discipline into its constitution during a period of cheap money and strong growth, when prudence was affordable. By 2024, it had become a legal barrier to survival. Marcel Fratzscher, president of the German Institute for Economic Research, called this the German illusion, the assumption that the structures and disciplines that created German success in the 20th century would automatically sustain it in the 21st. The model that worked when Germany was rebuilding, when Cold War politics gave it protected markets, when China was a customer rather than a competitor, when Russian gas was cheap and seemingly reliable, when demographics were favorable, that model is now the cage. You came into this video knowing Germany had economic problems. You're leaving with something harder to shake. 3 decisions, each made with confidence by serious people, each celebrated at the time, each a trap that took decades to fully close. The China addiction traded strategic sovereignty for a decade of profits. The energy transition traded industrial competitiveness for ideological consistency. The demographic neglect traded the future for the political comfort of the present. Not one of these was the product of corruption or incompetence. That's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. These were decisions made by educated, experienced, well-intentioned people who looked at the evidence available to them and got it profoundly wrong, because they assumed the future would look like the past, because they measured success by the metrics that had always worked, because they built on the strength of yesterday without noticing the foundations were shifting beneath it. Every economy that has ever entered structural decline told itself it was the exception. Britain in the 1970s, Japan in the 1990s, Rome in the 3rd century. The belief that the structures which produced greatness will automatically sustain it is one of the most persistent and costly illusions in economic history. The question Germany hasn't answered, and the question that will determine whether this becomes a managed reinvention or a genuine unraveling, is whether a democracy can make painful structural decisions while there is still time to choose, or whether it can only move once the floor has already given way. History, on that particular question, is not reassuring. If this changed the way you see the world around you, subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.